So as I've said, and as I will continue to say, Tim Mullins uses the Facebook page Find Summer Wells to spread propaganda and to control the narrative about Summer Wells' parents. Here's an interesting post he just put out. There was a scraggly rose bush. Passing by each day was a critic who criticized the bush. The irony was that as the years passed, the rose bush grew and grew vibrantly, but the critic never changed. The critic wasted his life. The rose bush lived life. God himself pruned, watered, fed, and nurtured the bush. God preferred the bush. Later, when it was too late for the critic who never grew realized that it had always been God's rose bush. The critic never saw God or the rose bush again. Wow. Let's pick that apart. Just to key everybody in, the rose bush is the Wells. Okay? That's the narrative he's putting forth here. There was a scraggly rose bush that would be the Wells. Passing by each day was a critic who criticized the bush. That would be social media and people who do not support the Wells. The irony was that as the years passed, the rose bush grew and grew vibrantly. That's where there's the disconnect here. We haven't seen years go by where the Wells have been growing and growing vibrantly. Okay? That hasn't happened. What we've seen is drunken tirades on YouTube. We've seen threats made against people. We've seen racist slurs. We've seen all sorts of odd behavior. We've seen arrests. We haven't seen years passing that the Wells have grown and grew vibrantly. Okay? That's the part Tim's trying to change the narrative on. Okay? But the critic never changed. Okay, I'll agree with you there. We haven't, those of us that do not support the Wells and believe they are in some way responsible for what happened to their daughter. We haven't seen anything to change our opinion because we don't see the bush growing vibrantly. We see the bush still looking like the same bush it's been its whole life. He says, the rose bush lived life. Yeah, they're living life. There's no doubt about that. God himself pruned, watered, fed, and nurtured the bush. God preferred the bush. I don't think God has preferences. I think God sees us all as his children. So I don't get that. Later, when it was too late for the critic who never grew, people can still grow because they keep the same opinion on one subject. That doesn't define their life or who they are. Realize that it had always been God's rose bush. Yeah, and you know what, Tim? That critic you keep speaking about, that's God's critic too. The critic never saw God or the rose bush again. So you're saying because people disagree with the Wells and don't see this growth that you see, they're not even getting into heaven, won't be seeing God again. Wow. And that's what's being done under the guise of Find Summer Wells.